God, it needs a bloody dust up here. I enjoy making cutouts, but to a certain point, because they're highly labour intensive and you've got to cut for many, many hours. And you get to a point where, I just wish tomorrow morning I wake up and the fairies have been and done all the cutting for me. I can see bits in the paper where I've gone, I cut a bit wide there, or I cut a bit thin there. But I think it's really important to have that craft. There's a lot of respect for that. And it is like making a painting. There's a lot of the strokes in all of the cutouts that I make. What's happening with my cutouts now is it's starting to hang in free space, suspended from the ceiling, rather than up against the wall, which is quite traditional. This is probably my favourite installation of these 3 cutout works, to suspend them so that they look like they're floating, and to be able to interact with them this way and move around them and look through them. Just presents this other dynamic to the work.
The cutout is something that fascinates people because people can see the way that she manipulates light and shade. It's very visceral, it's very obvious how she's using something ephemeral and kind of conjuring with it. So it's got tremendous appeal because the works are never static. You can always put them into play, different times of day, different times, they're going to look different.
When I first started making them, I was researching kowhaiwhai. And that kind of repetition and mirroring of patterns worked really well for cutouts. The next minute I was, also working with the shadow and with the light. And also too, staying in so many different whares and, when you go to bed at night and then you look up at the roof and you look at all the rafters and you see all the different kowhaiwhai patterns. Some of them are quite old and traditional and some of them are really contemporary, and you just kind of sit there and just look at them all like that. So I was quite inspired by that. The thing about kowhaiwhai is, it's about whakapapa. I really like that. And it's not only just, when I'm talking about whakapapa, it's not like my personal or my family whakapapa, whakapapa of nature, of plants, of trees, of things. So this work here, strata, you can see it's about these layers. And I was thinking about how we find out information about our history and how archaeologists and ethnologists and that look at land and they dig down to find evidence of occupation. You find the layer of shell, you find layers of ash, and so you glean all this information that's in the land that tells you about the people that used to occupy the land. But on another level, these stratas represent the heavens. We have many heavens in Māori and Polynesian cultures. While this work is talking about the land, it's also talking about spirituality as well.
What's really great about Lonnie and the way that she works is that she makes reference to place a lot of times. So she's done works about, the Seven Sisters. She's done works about the hills around Christchurch. She's made reference to her Ngā Tahu ancestry. And this work, which has to do with the historical stories of the Waiao and Clarence rivers. So she'll do that, but then she'll also use materials which are familiar to people, builder's paper or, objects that are familiar, like combs or the concertina pattern, and people can relate to that.
Once you're recognised for something, it's very hard to actually change direction. with watercolours, you've got to, depending on what you're trying to achieve, I suppose, but basically you've got to work really fast. The drawings that I'm working on now are a lot more freer, they're not so tight, and what's interested me conceptually has been transformation. Now, a lot of Māori myth, a lot of Ngā Tahu myth talk about transformation, or what we might call shapeshifters. I am part of the gay community, and so I've always been around lesbians and gay artists, as well as, you know, transgendered artists as well.
I just freestyled my fingers.
What's happened is I think they're a bit of a phenomenon in that these visual artists are gay, homosexual, transgender, but they're working from I suppose, a fine arts context and dressing up and performing. But when they perform, they just transform like you wouldn't believe. Six of these images actually come from the poses of one of the FAF swag performers. We're starting to engage a lot more in dialogue that looks at the history of other genders, especially in Indigenous cultures or in Māori and Polynesian cultures. Transgendered individuals were revered as having, I suppose, shaman qualities. And I find that area really interesting, and that's what I'd like to make further inquiries about. I'd make it for me first. I remember one lecturer when I was at art school that said, if you want to make it as an artist, you have to be a bit selfish. You have to devote everything to your work, you know. And you make that work for yourself first. And it's rung true, you know, because I always thought, oh, Polynesians, we're not selfish. We're not like that. But yeah, you are for that time that you're making that first view when you see it. And then you feel really eager and kind of go, right, and now I'm ready to share it.
He mea tautoko na te manga.
Kai pāho.